I didn't discover this little shop sort of in the course of my research. Peter Ward was the reason I got interested in Irish food in the first place. When I heard him speak in Kinsale in 2002, and in the midst of some rather dry deliveries by certain government ministers, suddenly I had frankly repaired to the bar, and I suddenly heard, because they had the monitor up in the corner of the bar, this young man with sort of unruly hair speaking with so much passion. It was like I was watching an Italian who was going like, and he was saying, you know, how can these people say, so someone whose name I won't mention it earlier said, there is no Irish cuisine and there's no important Irish food, and he said, how can people say this? And he just talked so much about really the raw materials and drinking buttermilk out of the metal pail when he was out cutting peat. And they probably made that all up, right?
No, I didn't. My hands show the way.
No. And his famous, the sort of punchline, which was widely reported at the time, and I may be misquoting it slightly, but he said when we invite visitors here from America and from England and from the continent, and we give them food from a German-owned supermarket, that ought to be considered an act of treason. And that kind of resounded with me, and I said I want to meet that fellow, and I met him, and one thing led to another.
It's an honour for Mary and I here in Country Choice to have Colman Andrews, a very, very famous writer, author, journalist, commentator on all things good in food. And Colman is an American who has fallen in love with Ireland, and I'm delighted to think that somewhere along the line he has discovered a little shop at 25 Kenyon Street Nenagh, and he has taken us maybe one step further with this wonderful book of his, The Country Cooking of Ireland.
I grew up in I guess what would have been called a Hollywood household. My father was a screenwriter at the movie studios, and my mother had been what they used to call an ingenue, not a little more than an extra, but not quite a speaking part actress, and although she'd stopped by the time I was born. So I was used to Hollywood people, and my parents would give big parties and have all kinds of people like Dick Powell and I don't know, Rhonda Fleming and people like that were friends of theirs, and so I kind of grew up with that milieu, and it was fun. My approach to food, I always say, is from the table, not from the kitchen, because my father made decent money writing in the movie studios. My mother was a terrible cook, so they went out to dinner a lot, and they took me with them. So we went to all the best restaurants in Los Angeles at the time, back in the 50s and into the 60s, and really, I mean, probably from the time I was literally still a babe in arms, I was being taken to restaurants, and so I grew up feeling very comfortable in restaurants and just liking the whole milieu. So that was my first approach to food. First writing I did about food was as a restaurant critic or a restaurant reviewer. That's how I got interested in food. I started writing about food because when I was in college I needed to make some extra money, and I tried selling magazine articles, and I wrote about a lot of other things, music and I don't know, whatever I could figure out. And little by little I started writing about food because that was something I was interested in, obviously. And next thing I know, here I am. Here I am in Ireland.
We were on a road trip in Tipperary on the loop, and as we come to where you turn off for Lusca on the left hand side, there is a house on the right. I think, is it Cleary, Stephen? Ballycolleton, is it?
Ballycolleton, yeah.
And there's a huge field on the corner, and there was about 400 sheep in the field. And he said, stop the car, stop the car, stop the car. And there was a big black May sky with a shower going to come. And the sheep were snow white silhouetted against a green field. And they said, picture, picture, picture. So when they get out, they said, who owns those sheep? And I said, I suspect it's the Clearys that live in that house. And he said, I bet you they have a great recipe for Irish stew. And he said, wheel in there. I said, Colman, not in my life am I driving up that drive to get a recipe. I know these people, but you can't just do things like that here into the yard. So anyway, the next day they go down and we visit Anne and we visit Nancy and we have a lovely time, and we go on around to Dorothy and Barbara and the whole lot. And the next day anyway, I meet them on the street, and he has a postcard on his inside pocket. And he said, by the way, he said, Margaret Cleary said hello, he said. And he knocked at her door and he asked for an Irish stew recipe like on the back of a fag box.
You know, people say there is no Irish cuisine per se, and that's actually true. I don't think you can make a case for a cuisine in the sense of a highly developed series of dishes with consistent rules. What there is a lot of very good cooking, and that's on several levels. On a very basic farmhouse level, people, as is true everywhere in the world, people that have very few raw materials to work with tend to take them to their highest point of development. And you know, it's a horrible cliche, but when the Irish cook potatoes, they know how to cook potatoes, among other things, and they know how to bake. The ingredients are key in Irish food. I tell people when I'm talking about the recipes in the book, there's 250 recipes, there may be 15 or 16 of those are fairly complicated. The rest are very simple. And I always say that's the good news and the bad news. It's good news because you don't need to be a terribly accomplished chef in order to make these dishes. The bad news is because they're so simple, if you're not using the best possible ingredients, they don't taste like much. And I just have found consistently in Ireland that whether you're talking about seafood, obviously, talking about the pork products, I think the butchers of Ireland are the original artisanal foodsmiths here. If you're talking about the wonderful dairy products, and fortunately right now in America you can buy Irish butter all over the country in supermarkets. It's being exported by Kerrygold, you know, and it's obviously mass produced, but it's still far and away above anything else you can buy, even the imported butters from France or whatever. It's just so rich and elastic, and even people that don't know anything about Irish food use it in their cooking. So I think the raw materials are absolutely essential, and you know, people sometimes try to take shortcuts, or you know, leave out things, or use milk instead of cream, or skim milk instead of real milk, or margarine instead of butter, and then the food doesn't taste any good. Because it's based on having those things in there.
The book is very, very important for us, and not alone is it important as a social record of our food, but it's an immensely political record also of what is all that's good, clean and fair, as we say in slow food, in Irish food. Agus go more be it Tiberdorn. So what I'm saying is that there are major challenges facing a number of us in this room tonight in terms of how we drive forward with food in the Irish economy. This book will give us somewhat of an understanding of how to engage with the core indigenous ingredients of this island, which has sustained us for thousands of years, and which sometimes, in our quest for sophistication, we may tend to neglect. It also gives us a methodology to engage with the suppliers, because this book is about produce, but it's also about the story of many, many people.
Something I noticed when I started coming to Ireland is that almost everyone that I've met here, whether it's in a small town, I mean, Nenagh an agricultural town, but even in Dublin or in Belfast or in Cork or wherever, whatever part of the country I'm in, almost anyone I meet, even people that have nothing to do with the food business, they have some relationship to a farm. If they didn't grow up on a farm, their parents grew up on a farm, or their uncle has a farm where they spent summers, or something, or at the very least, their granddad has a little potato patch, or their mom raises chickens, or their grandmother there's some real connection with the land, with everybody, just with ordinary people in Ireland walking down the street. It's amazing, and I think that really people aren't aware of it even. I think if you say that to most Irish people, they say, oh, I never thought of that before. Of course I did. You know, doesn't everybody? Well, no, everybody doesn't. And I think that really has an effect on the food and on the attitude toward good food. It's just that you know these phrases that are very popular now in America and probably here, certainly in England and so forth, like sustainability and traceability and farm to table or farm to market and things like that. That's old news in Ireland. I mean, they're maybe endangered somewhat here, but that's the way food has been for a very long time here.